Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe for another action figure comparison video, and today we're taking a look at the SH Figuarts Avengers Infinity War Hulk, and we're going to see how he compares to the Figma Avengers Hulk. Now first off, I know that both of these figures are based on two different looks for the Hulk. The Figma one is based on how he looked in the first Avengers movie, and the Figuarts one is based on how he looked for the 15 seconds that he was in the Infinity War movie. So they are different, but I thought that there was enough similarities there to make a fair comparison. So let's get into it, starting with the overall look. First off, they're both pretty accurate in their own way. I think that the Figuarts version is more accurate in terms of size and mass and just muscle definition, and I think the Figma one is more accurate with the color. I think the shade of green they used here looks more like he does in the movies, and over here there's like a darker shade of green, and it's cool because it works for like a comic book Hulk too if you want, but as strictly an MCU Hulk, I think the overall shade of green is more accurate on the Figma one. But as I said, I think the mass and the size and just the way the muscles look on the Figuarts one is more accurate. He looks bigger, and also the way the articulation works makes it so you could get him into more accurate poses. You could get him hunched over and have him look kind of like apish, kind of how he was running around in the first Avengers movie. With this one here, you don't have that option with the articulation because they didn't give him the torso crunch or the torso joint. But the benefit of that is you have a cleaner sculpt, and I think the chest on the Figma one looks a lot better than the chest on the Figuarts one, only because they don't have that joint in the middle and it just looks more streamlined and cleaned. And another thing too, I think that the arms, the length of the arms look a little more natural on the Figma one, and you're able to get his arms down to the side a little bit more, and I like that there. But in every other aspect, I think that the Figuarts one is more accurate. The sculpt itself looks much more like he does in the movies. It's big, it's muscular, and for the face sculpts, it's not even a comparison. The face sculpt on the Figuarts one looks way better than the Figma one. I was never a fan of the way that this Figma face looks. I mean, the expression is okay, but it really never screamed MCU Hulk to me. But the Figuarts one is a perfect head sculpt. It looks just like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. So taking a closer look at both of these figures, both of them are executed very well. Neither one of them lacks any kind of details or anything like that. Both Figma and Figuarts really went all out with both of them. I love the shading on both of these guys. There's a lot of nice shading on the arms of the Figuarts one. That's where it really stands out. But on the Figma one, you pretty much could see shading everywhere, including the arms. It's a little more subtle, but it all fades more naturally on here. And like I said, you have the torso that looks better because it's just one sculpted piece. When it comes to the overall look and the sculpt of the two figures, I'm going to say that I like the Figuarts one a lot more. I just love the mass. I like how big and intimidating he is, and I like the fact that because of his articulation, you could get him into different kind of poses that you might see in the movie. You can't really do that with the Figma one, so it kind of, I mean, the sculpt is nice and everything, but it's just kind of nice while it's standing there. You can't get it in as accurate poses as you can with the Figuarts one. And in the articulation department, it's really not even close. The Figuarts one wins by a lot. He's got double jointed elbows, double jointed knees. The Figma one does not, but for the knees and elbows, they pretty much get the same range of motion. So that's not the big reason why the Figuarts one wins by a lot. It's mostly because the shoulders, he does have the shoulder swivel, so you could bring them out and you can move them in all kinds of different directions. The Figma one doesn't. He just has the ball joint shoulders, the ball peg shoulders that just kind of stick into the torso. And then speaking of the torso, the Figuarts one has this awesome ab crunch. You could get him to go forward a really nice amount, and you could bring his head up without any problems. And that's ideal for getting Hulk into those hunched over apish type poses. And the Figma one can't do that because he does not have the torso joint. But what they did here was really interesting. They have a waist joint, and with that waist joint, you can actually get him to crunch a pretty decent amount. Look at that. That's actually really good. But it's not as good as the Figuarts one. And also, when you do that, it's very frustrating because when you bring it forward that much, it kind of brings his torso above his pants, and then if you automatically push it back, you're gonna like rip the plastic here. So when you're taking it back, you got to be very careful to wrap the pants back around the waist. But still, the range of motion on that waist joint is really impressive. I was really hoping that we'd see something like that on the recently released Ragnarok Mezco Hulk, but they decided not to go that route. So I thought that was a missed opportunity. I think that they could have done something very similar to the Figma Hulk here, and that would have been really cool if they didn't want to do the whole torso ab crunch and all that. But anyways, back to these guys here. So yeah, the Figuarts one has a really nice torso ab situation, and this thing just is crazy. You could get a lot of nice poses out of it. You can move to the side, all kinds of cool stuff. Just things you can't really do with the Figma one. And then with the legs actually work a lot better than the Figma ones do too. See, you can't really, I mean, you could get his legs apart and stuff like that, but then his legs want to pop out as soon as you do that, and that is super frustrating. And that's one big negative thing with this figure. The fun factor isn't quite there because when you're messing with it, he just kind of falls apart, especially in the legs. It's driving me crazy actually messing with it. But same thing with the head. You bring his head up too much and it just pops out. So, you know, as far as the articulation goes, that's one big drawback. Trying to get him into good poses isn't very fun because he just kind of falls apart. But I'd say that the articulation setup on the Figma figure is pretty good. It's decent enough. You could get Hulk into most of the poses that you'd want to. So that's okay, but it's just not as good as the Figuarts one. The Figuarts one has awesome articulation, and he wins in that department by a lot, in my opinion. And then in the accessory department, they both come with 2 sets of hands. Both of them have a pair of fists and a pair of open hands. But Figuarts is going to win in this category too, because not only does it come with multiple sets of hands, he also comes with 3 different head sculpts. The first one is just a serious looking face, and then he has a kind of angry face, and then he has a super screaming angry face. And the Figma one does not come with multiple heads, but it should be noted that he does have articulating eyes, and I think that's okay, but I'm not really a big fan of it here because it's kind of hard to see his eyes. They're kind of small, so what does it matter which way they're looking, you know? I think it would have been a better decision to give him multiple heads instead of the articulating eyes. So as far as scale goes, both of these figures scale perfectly fine within their own lines. As you can see, the Figuarts version is a little bit bigger, but that's okay. Figma figures tend to run a little bit smaller, but as you can see, the Figma Captain America lines up with the Figma Hulk at about the same spot that the Figuarts Captain America lines up with the Figuarts Hulk. So I think that both of them work perfectly fine. Captain America's head ends up right at about his bicep, and then same thing goes over here. So the Figma Hulk works perfectly fine for Figma figures. The Figuarts one works perfectly fine for Figuarts figures. But the fact that the Figuarts one is a little bit bigger makes it a little bit easier for him to fit in with some of the other lines out there. Other 6-inch lines tend to run a little bit bigger than import figures. So this Hulk still kind of works with something like Marvel Legends, as you could see here. I think he looks good next to these Captain Americas. The Figma version looks good too, but not as good. He's just not as big compared to the Marvel Legends Captain America. But yeah, overall, I think they both scale perfectly fine. So in the end, although I think that both of these are really good figures, I think the Figuarts one is far superior to the Figma one. The only clear advantage I'd say that the Figma one has is the skin color and the fact that you could bring his arms all the way down. It kind of bugs me on the Figuarts one that I can't put his arms straight down, but it's not like I'm going to be posing him like that. It's just the fact that I can't really do it. It's kind of frustrating. So the Figma one has that and the skin tone, and that's it. In every other aspect, the Figuarts one is way, way better. Articulation, the sculpt, the playability, the fun factor. The Figma one's fun factor is, man, it's really frustrating because when you're messing with it, his legs just fall apart. They will fall apart after just a few minutes of messing with it. Of course, you could plug it back together and it's not a big deal, but it's a little frustrating when you're messing with it, and it definitely affects the overall experience when you're messing with the figure. And one thing I'll give a lot of credit to the Figma one. I love the way they did the torso because they were able to get a pretty decent amount of articulation without having to sacrifice the sculpt. The sculpt there is really good. All the details on that figure are really good, but I'm just going to say that the Figuarts one is way, way better in my opinion. Now, I don't own the Figma one, but if I did, he would probably be one of my favorite Hulk figures. Top 10 for sure, because he's a really good figure. But because I don't have him now, and now I have this Infinity War one, which is probably my favorite Hulk figure, I don't really feel the need to go out and buy this Figma figure. But if you already have it, it's an awesome figure, and you definitely have a spot for him in your collection since it's a different version of the Hulk than the Infinity War version. That is until Figuarts puts out their Avengers Hulk. But for now, there's space in your collection for both of these guys. And one more thing that should be noted, Figma Arts had the added advantage of learning from their mistakes because they did put out a Figuarts Hulk a couple years ago when Age of Ultron came out, and even though that figure was decent, it was a far cry from both of these figures. Compared to these, that one is garbage. I liked it at the time. The articulation is fun, but it looks nothing like the MCU Hulk. It kind of looks like an anime Hulk, which is ironic because that kind of fits in with the Figma aesthetic with some of the other characters that they put out. But yeah, it wasn't a very good figure. All in all, I'd say it's a failure. So Figuarts was able to learn from that, it looks like, and apply it to this new Hulk, and you know, they reached some great success with that. So you know, you got to give them that. I'm sure if Figma tried another Hulk, I'm sure they would do a really good job, and it would be a huge improvement over the last one, and maybe it'd be better than the Infinity War Figuarts one. Who knows? And before I get out of here, I want to give a huge shout out to D Amazing for letting me borrow this Figma Hulk figure. When I bought the Infinity War version, I posted on Instagram about how happy I was to have it, and I just wish that I had the Figma one so I could do a comparison video. And then he reached out to me and offered to let me borrow his Figma Hulk. So that was really awesome of you, man. I really appreciate it. I'll be sure to send this back to you ASAP. And I'm sure if you're watching my video, you're probably already very familiar with D Amazing, but if you're not, I highly suggest that you check out his Instagram and his YouTube. He's an awesome action figure reviewer, and he's a super talented action figure photographer. So I'll be sure to leave links to his stuff in my description below, so be sure to check that out, and that would be awesome if you did that. So once again, thanks a lot, D Amazing. I really appreciate it. But that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and thank you very much. Peace.